All right. So how's things?
Oh, good. A lot of work to do over the weekend, the past few days.
Yeah, Discord's getting quite busy, isn't it?
Yeah,
It's good to see.
practically crowded now.
I managed to go through all your comments in the doc and cleared off a lot of them. I've left a couple responses where I just wanted to make sure that my thinking was correct. But I basically agreed. I don't know if you've had a chance. I did that about an hour ago. I don't know if you had a chance to go through it again.
No, I haven't yet. I just started looking at it.
Yeah, that's fine. I mean, we can just go straight through. So what I suggest is, it seems like we're pretty close to this in terms of getting in front of our legal professional. I guess the difficult part is to pre-guess what needs explained in the doc, because there's a lot of assumed knowledge, and also to make sure that I'm being completely consistent with the wording. So after that, what I suggest is take a step back. Strikes me that we probably should do one test module just to test out what the flow is on that. NDA sounds a good one. There may be others. And a test contract between the four of us, and how all that ties together, we can then present saying, well, okay, this is how we would like it to work, and here's our starter in terms of how we want the DPL to work. So can you advise on the DPL? So how does that sound?
Well, I mean, we won't really know until we know at this point, right? So,
Yeah.
But I mean, all we can really do is just put in what we think we want, and then the legal professionals will probably push back and say, "Well, that's what you think you want, but it's really not what you want. You want this." So
Yeah. Well, it's more likely just to say, what the fuck? What are you guys on?
yeah.
Okay, so, right, let's go down through the comments. So the first one, did we define signed as both digital public key and physically signed? I referenced the definition of signed below because you'd been reading this from top to bottom, so you might not have seen that definition yet. Is that definition satisfy that comment?
Yeah, I think we'll need Tom's input on that. But that's how it actually works.
You mean the
Signed
DRM
code.
practicalities of it?
Yeah, I mean, is that the actual control flow for this? Like, a user commits to their Dreamcatcher Ghost blockchain evidence that they are willing to be bound by it. Is that what signed means?
Yeah. So let me go into this. So the signature is any signature is based on evidence, right? And you could forge and so on. Now, the one thing that you can't forge is ownership of the key of the chain that represents you. So you're the owner of that chain.
What I'm saying is that we should probably explain it like that. I mean, that's the way I understand it. You have a public key and a private key, and your private key is your signature, sort of thing. I mean, because in terms of blockchains, that space, that's how signing works, especially on almost every other protocol.
That's necessary.
So I mean,
sorry.
So I mean, unless we're doing something different, which is what tripped me up here, because that's why I was saying maybe Tom needs to talk to this, because it sounds like we're doing something completely different from what other protocols are doing.
Oh, I see what you're saying. No, we're not. I mean, obviously Tom can chip in if he wants, but we're talking about two separate things here. This is probably why we're going past each other. So there's how do you commit things into the Dreamcatcher such that, so as if you took a paper copy, signed it, and scanned it. What do you do with that asset that you just scanned? You put it onto your Ghost blockchain and saying, I own this blockchain, I put this on, and that's a certain amount of evidence that you signed that document, which is pretty hard evidence because nobody else could have done it with the key that you have. However,
All right,
that's
so,
not
so
signed.
you're referring now to an evidence stack as well.
Yes,
right?
That's right. There's two levels here.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
you've got the facility to put something on that everyone else knows that it was you. And then the second part, the part we're really talking about here, the legal part, is what you're saying. And this is why I'm saying you can be, the evidence that you've signed the DPL or actually signed any module comes down to your ability to put that onto your ghost chain and have that for anyone to see. And if you can produce the keys, then it's certain that you did this and nobody else. So I think probably. Sorry.
Because in my mind, what signed means is if you and I were to have a transaction on the blockchain, and I were to commit to that transaction, that would be me signing that transaction on the blockchain.
Yeah, it's strange, isn't it? Because there's namespace clash here, isn't there? So we've got a legal. We're talking in terms of the DPL, a legal signature, which could just be a piece of paper, really, that you've drawn any kind of mark on that is uniquely evidenced against you. And what you're talking about is in the technical space, in the DR case, the fact that there's some kind of transaction between two chains, and because of the your public key, private key, you know that it's this entity that's doing it. But these they're using the same word, but they're different things. So the second one allows you to put the evidence on there, but is disinterested in actually what the evidence is. This part is actually you've signed and therefore seem to have read the DPL and be willing to be held by it. So if any pickups on that one, because the next part seems fairly straightforward, which is I can extend the definition of signed to include those two layers. So when I say commits to their,
I think we have to include all of that as the evidence stack that we paid.
Yeah.
If you're interacting with the blockchain using this protocol in our client, then stage one is that you're already committed to DPL by default. That's it. I mean, you probably have to click something that says that if you use this protocol and use the client, then you've already committed to these terms of service, right?
Right.
So, okay.
No, which is the interesting thing. So I reference the notes. Let me pull it up.
No, I'm not talking about I know anybody can spin up their own node.
Yeah.
And all that other stuff. I'm talking about the entire. If you use the what do we call that? The entire repository, if you will. Like if you're using all the tools in the toolbox, then you're pretty much committed to the DPL, right?
Yes, because a lot of it is instantiated inside the functionality of the
right.
Yeah. Previously I can't remember. It's DCM. We're calling it now, isn't it? The DCM. Yeah.
So okay. I guess what we're saying here is there's two different types of signatures. One's a physical signature, and the other one's a digital signature. And I guess the question is, do we need to make those two separate definitions, or can we put those all under the same thing? Because it's like, well, if you sign a piece of paper to put on the blockchain, that's still considered a signature. And if you sign using your private key, then I guess you've already committed.
Yeah, no, that's good. That's a good point. I was thinking about this previously, and actually I was considering splitting those off, where signed actually meant on the chain, public-private key, and using the word executed for what previously I was talking about with a signature, because a contract is executed. But then execution is also have a namespace clash. I don't know if you.
Yeah, because I would think backwards from that. So if you said, "Hey, this has been executed," I'd be like, "Okay, that must be something in the blockchain." And then if you said, "Oh, this has been signed," then I'm like, "Oh, that must be a piece of paper."
Exactly. There's so much overlap between these two realms.
So, I mean, maybe we need to put physically signed. Or
yes.
Make it more of a real. This is a real world signature that we're referring to. If that's the definition, if you mean by a real world signature, then I guess we have to, because the lawyer is going to push it back at it and say, "The hell does this mean?"
Again. So not to get too hung up on the actual functionality, but it would seem that if you, for example, DocuSign something, that would be a reasonable way of executing the DPL and then putting the evidence of that onto the DCM should be sufficient. So it's,
because
physical is not quite
we're
right.
Talking about, we're talking about bootstrapping here, right? Bootstrapping is the license. Okay, so I guess my question is, do people who are coming after us have to necessarily bootstrap their license stack? Since all the infrastructure will be there for them to navigate this a little bit more easily than we will, because we have to kind of lay the concrete as we're driving over it. So I'm just wondering. I mean, out loud. This isn't just. I mean, I'm not saying this like this is something we have to think about, but right now. But I'm just saying that in the future we may not even have to worry about this. Like maybe no one else but us even gives a shit about signing a piece of paper and scanning it and putting it on a blockchain.
It seems anachronistic, doesn't it?
Well, I was thinking that this might be a bootstrap issue. Like it's only going to concern us core people that are actually starting out in bootstrapping the protocol. But after it's up and running, no one's going to give two shits whether or not you actually physically find something or not. They're probably more interested in KYU or other evidence in their chain that's more pertinent to what they're trying to do on the blockchain, or what module they're more keen on, or this or that. So
here's an idea. Thinking what you're saying there, think through. We've got this idea where you advertise the legal surface which you are content to interact with others on, and in terms of bootstrapping, the core DPL is the first thing that you advertise, and by advertising, so you remember the evidence stack. The first evidence is like you're just self-evidence. You're stating, yes, I'm going to do that, but no third parties check that you're actually who you are or anything like that. So taking it to court could be a problem, but it's better than just turning up. Maybe by signed or executed, we're saying that you've clicked an option inside your ghost saying, yeah, I agree with the DPL. And if someone else has done similarly, then the DPL is enforced between you. In the same way as we're saying, if you've installed a module, or if you agree to a module, the other person's got the same module, then that's enforced between you. Maybe it's that simple. Maybe we're overdoing this whole printing out signing thing. Because the printing out signing thing, I don't know how much force that has over.
It doesn't. It's just. I think it's a bootstrapping exercise that I think we all want to do, especially Tom. Tom's very keen on this as a way to. I think maybe this is more of a way of the DAO Foundation trust sort of angle, where it's something you can take to potential investors who want to invest in seed rounds of the actual foundation behind the protocol. And show that there's people that are actually committed in some way, shape, or form to this. To the point where we've actually put a physical signature on it, said that we shall not be dicks, and we're committed to doing the work, and that gives maybe investors warm fuzzies about committing some sort of capital to the project. I mean, I would have to think that would be the angle that anybody would care, so that way they could give something to their lawyers that would say, oh, these people have signed something.
Right. Exactly, and maybe that's the point. So maybe put this up in the briefing to the lawyer at the start, is advice on what would be submissible in a civil court under contract law in terms of an agreement, and if it's as simple as a block that says, a DPL signatory, then that's good to go. But that stack goes all the way back to that person who did that has the private key and rights and access to do that on that specific chain, and so that chain can be submitted itself. I think we need advice on what a court would consider as a signature, because we're.
Well, I can tell you that I can tell you that the only thing that the court will recognize is somebody actually signing a document and or get something notarized on top of that. Like, that's it. Really? That's all they're going to care about.
What? Just an actual physical signature? Is that what you're saying?
Especially in the U.S. Forget about it. That's about it. I mean, They still make you sign your freaking receipts for credit cards. Like that's in law, man. You have to still sign a receipt for a credit card transaction.
God, that's so fucking backward.
Oh well, it's that's just how it works. I mean, because everybody has you have to be able to match it up with somebody that actually has a physical signature. If there's ever a dispute, that's where they go. That's their default. Did you sign the document or not? That's all they care about. So,
despite all the very obvious attack vectors on physical signatures. Well, maybe we'll just collapse it to scan copy, and we'll just state it scan copy, put on the chain. Only you have access to putting evidence on your own ghost chain, and by you, we're really talking about the holder of the private key for that chain, and that's that's the stack.
Yep. And on top of that stack is like everything else that you put on there, depending on how far deep you want to go into proving you as you. You know.
And we'll wait for the US to catch up. Sorry, Yanks. Sorry. Yeah. I keep forgetting this is public. Okay, let me get this done. So, signed equals physical scan, physical signed, scanned, uploaded to the evidence object of the ghost that presents the LDE, and which definition is can only be done by the holder of the private key for that ghost. Okay. Does that make sense? That's the stack. I'll tidy it up. I won't leave it like that, but
that's fine.
Yeah. I sometimes forget, but nobody physically signs anything in the UK anywhere.
Right.
It's and I haven't done for 10 years, probably more.
That's my point. Like, well, I mean, unless you're like buying property or doing something extremely legal, then signature never really gets involved much anymore.
No.
So.
Right. Okay. Sorry. Go.
It's a dying art.
That's because it's a shit way of doing it. Right. Okay. So happy with that first one. Yeah. I'm back up. Sorry. Page 1, first comment.
Yeah. I'm signed. Page 1. So yeah, and that signed, and that definition kind of goes back into this other comment about signed unilaterally and all that. So all that's kind of bundled up into that signed question. So just let you know. We don't have to answer that right now. That's just all those comments are kind of related to what is this? What is the signature? So,
Do I need to expand what I mean by signed unilaterally?
I'm just saying that we're using a lot of terms, signed and signed signature and all that stuff. So, with my mind being confused as to what that means, that's why I was highlighting them. So, just so you know.
Okay. No, that's really.
I don't need explanation. That's just where my mind was when I was reading all that. So,
I see.
As long as we type it.
All right. So that's Okay. So the definition I've just put there is the evidence stack, which we've collapsed down to something actually physically you have to do. The signed unilaterally. All that means is there's not any co-signatories on it. So, for example, you sign the DPL using that definition. And you advertise that. The sign with the contracts it is at least co-party because you're actually agreeing with someone else. So that's the distinction there. So when I say contracts are not signed unilaterally, meaning it needs to be signed between two users, because otherwise, who are you having a contract with? So a module you can advertise, the DPL you advertise, a contract you agree.
Yep. Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
That's cool. Right. I'm now on page 2. We may want to add that to represent the lowest level of license stack. Oh yeah, I've already added that. That's fine. Okay. Isn't a user any person that interacts with the DRM? No, it's not. So the reason I went through LDE to define a user is so it includes the ability to add in a company. So the LDE is the definition that we've got below, which is a legal entity, and that legal entity, when it interacts with anything to do with the Dreamcatcher, is a user. So it's not a person. It includes people, but it's not solely constrained to a person. How do you interact with any other user? Yeah, I remove that because it's superfluous. I'm a user, an LDE who interacts with the DCM. That's the definition. I responded to your client comment. Does that make sense?
So we got. Okay, so when I'm speaking of client, there's still going to be sort of user interface to interact with the DRM and or other users on the DRM.
Yep.
Or the DCM, right?
Yep.
So if I'm a user, I'm going to need some sort of GUI or command line system where I'm interacting with that. So I'm going to need some sort of interface. So when you say Dreamcatcher instant, does a Dreamcatcher, I guess maybe Tommy's comments, does the Dreamcatcher instant incorporate all those user-defined features that we need, or do we need something else that like plugs into that? So something that sits on top of it and just kind of calls and grabs data as the user needs it. So I think that's where I was getting hung up as to what instance means.
No, I'm not getting your drift here.
Think of you got Dreamcatcher substrate, and then you got all these different stacks interconnecting with it. But then a user needs to interact with the substrate, right? So if I'm going to go and navigate to somebody's website on the Dreamcatcher, I'm going to see that they've got some sort of job listing there, and I'll be able to do that job, and I click accept. When I click accept, it's going to have to interact with protocol in some way. Now, right now, what happens is that if I click on something and I interact with it on any other protocol, my wallet pops up, and I have to accept the terms of that through my wallet, and that would be the client, was the wallet.
So you're talking about the it doesn't necessarily need to be graphical, but the UI of some sort. That's what you're meaning when you talk about client.
Right. So I mean, and so I was just getting hung up as what the Dreamcatcher instant means. Does it mean a UI? Does it mean just this code running in the background?
The thing I'm talking about the instance, although it would be pretty useless without a UI. By instance, it's the meat of the code running anywhere or on your laptop anywhere in the world. But importantly, that agrees with the Dreamcatcher protocol and can actually connect and exchange and transact with other similar pieces of code running. So I'm thinking about the meat of it, although the back end, let's say, of it. But without a UI, you're quite right. It'll be quite useless. But I don't know. I've kind of discounted I kind of assumed the UI because the UI itself is not really the important thing. The important thing is the ability to transact to other similar entities using the protocol, which is not really the UI that's doing.
I mean, I would push back and saying I would say that the UI is probably one of the most important things, only because it's
exactly. As I said, it's pretty useless without it.
It's the one thing I think most people submit their own version.
Yeah. Absolutely. No, it's pretty useless without it. But that's not what I'm thinking about. That's not what what I'm meaning about this.
So Dreamcatcher instance is the backbone instance, right? The substrate.
It's the back end. Yeah, exactly. I don't think we talk about UIs or anything. I don't know. We need to define it in the DPL.
No, but this is what let me ask because I just need to know where instance means.
Yeah,
Instance.
cool. Is there any way I can make this clearer for the next along highlighted?
Maybe to put back in somewhere, like we're talking about the back end of the code.
Version
So
of the Gene
I don't know where to put it yet, but I'm just put just put a note there.
Yeah, I'll put a note.
Maybe I'll come up with something tomorrow. So
yeah,
after I sleep on it.
Okay, right. Okay.
So API, just maybe we need to know what we think an API is, even though API is pretty
yeah.
with most people now, but
we can put that in, but I don't talk about API anywhere else. So other than here.
Well, you can define it here if you want.
And the only actually I think we will. The only problem is not being self-referential, because it's like any Dreamcatcher protocol is anything that can interact with another instance, which is also running the Dreamcatcher protocol. But
I mean, the Dreamcatcher protocol is similar to operation of an application binary interface, and just put the API next to that.
Yeah. Oh, I see. Just expand that. You mean?
Yeah, just put what the term is, and then just put the actual API just next to it, and that way it's already defined, pretty much.
Let's see if there's a better commonly used. Yeah, okay, that's good enough. Lost my. There it is. Okay. And bracketize that. Okay, next one.
Yeah, open source. So I'm just kind of leaving that for them because it is what it is.
We're just putting that off into another license. Yeah, I like this list. This was a good list. So I think that you put that in a comment and I just put it in. So if you're happy with that.
Oh, yep, all good.
Yep, contract law is good.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's. Yep. Yes, we do. I think too. Sorry, I'm now on mediation control flow process. Yes, we do. I think more as an explanatory part as opposed to inside the DPL. And partly to kind of walk through ourselves and make sure we're not getting ourselves tied up in any loops.
We can put that in the guidance up top.
Yeah.
As to what we're trying to do here. This document is really a mediation control flow and way to settle disputes,
Yeah.
in digital form. Really.
Yeah. Exactly.
So maybe just push that up top then.
Yeah.
So that way the lawyers know where we're coming from, what we're trying to do.
And also, it did occur to me that it might be helpful to put some kind of draft flow on how you reach a contract between two users, because that's not immediately obvious. So previously,
I just figured we're going to probably have some figures in here somewhere. I've already started making figures and stuff, so I've already actually made it in the specification. I actually mapped out the Dreamcatcher, and it looks like a Dreamcatcher. So there you go.
I'm really keen to see this. I know you don't want to distract, but I'm really keen to see.
Oh, I mean, I could put it up if you want. I don't care. I just don't want Tom and everybody just like reading this document and making all these comments when they could be doing other things. Because that's why I was asking Tom, should I even put it up yet? Because if it's too soon, then I don't want to distract from other conversations, because I'll just be in the event with Tom and I can listen in, and as they're talking, I can just make notes and start putting it into the spec. You know what I mean? So
yeah.
It
would be. I think it might be helpful because it'll be useful to see the chain of reasoning as you're putting this together, because part of that comes down to how we're going to explain this to anyone else, and part of it also.
Maybe just an overview. I mean, so maybe Tom and anybody else is listening. This is just an aside, but I'll try to make it as easy as possible. So in my mind, in most engineering design work that I've done in the past 20 some odd years now, what happens is we do specifications. Specifications have the requirements lead to a hazard analysis. The hazard analysis leads to the FMEA. The FMEA then goes through verification validation, which talks back to the specification, and it's a closed loop.
Yep.
And that's your risk mitigation and everything, and quality, and everything all wrapped into those couple of documents. That's it. You're done. You don't really need to do anything else. So as long as we say what we do and do what we say, and we've tested that we said what we did, and it did what it said, then you're done. So
yeah. No, I totally agree with that. It's going to be very necessary, especially for the audit. But the thing I was about to say is actually what would be quite useful is to feed back the clarity of thought that process drives back into the dictionary, because I think the dictionary is still too wordy and raggedy by a long way. I think it's correct. It's probably complete, but whether it's understandable is dubious. But that's
and this helps with auditing as well, because auditors will be able to look at everything. Everything will be numbered and indexed, and go right back, and you'll be able to actually see what the risk mitigations were before and after mitigation. So what we thought was the likelihood, severity in the detection, and then before the risk mitigation took place, and then after we had a mitigation installed into that feature or function, what the new score was, so that you can actually see that it was, thought about and looked at.
Yeah.
Whether or not whether or not an auditor agrees with you or not, it's a different story. That's what the audit report's for. But I mean, but at least there's a clear, conscious effort to actually, that there's transparency, and that you've actually tried to think of everything.
Right. Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Exactly. If you feel minded, please do put it up. I don't think it would distract, and it's going to be early draft anyway. So, but it would be quite interesting, certainly from my part. Because part of it is the thought process you're going through right now, and being aware of that process as well as the end result.
Right. Right. And like I said, it's like 90% bullshit right now, but it's the 10% that we're worried about.
Yeah, I was saying the pretty good ratio. So arbitration, right? I've beefed this out a bit.
Yep.
You agree with that?
Yes. Release escrow funds. Is that all that they do?
No. Actually, I can extend that. So if we refer to, where is it?
Be sure they got three different things they can do.
Yes.
Maybe we should tighten up those three things into one phrase.
It's under the damages clause on page 8, so we can refer to those three.
I'm just going to put a note here as a comment. It's not necessarily for you. It could be for me.
Right, I'm going to drop those.
Another phrase for this. So we'll go through this tomorrow. I'll just kind of noodle my brain to see that kind of has all those things that we're talking about damages, because there might not be. The decision may not be anything that happens on it.
Yeah. It's just these are facilities available to the arbiter. Okay. And I don't like duplicating data, so I'll put a note to put a reference in damages back to arbitration.
Just put maybe put at the end here, C damages. Yeah. So if I put in a phrase here, we can just say C damages at the end. To the appropriate section.
Cool.
You can even put a hyperlink.
If you like. Okay.
So we're saying a contract is definitely an offer and acceptance. Like you can't have.
Yes, that's what I'm proposing.
Okay.
So, and that's the distinction between it and a module. So a module and a DPL are unilaterally advertised as the legal surface which you're prepared to do business on. A contract is a point-to-point, when whether that's many or just two people, it doesn't matter. But it's a single agreement which comes into place for a specific piece of work, and really only, I think, holds the parameters for that work. So it's the parameterization. It doesn't change any clauses of anything else.
And this is just a peer-to-peer, user-to-user acceptance and offer, right?
Yep.
This is nothing to do with. Okay, I'm not saying this to me and you necessarily, but I'm just saying it to the universe at the point. This has nothing to do with smart contracts necessarily, because that's going to be completely different beastie that exists on the Dreamcatcher. So I just don't want anybody confusing what that this would have to say smart contract, because smart contract would be smart code written, or that could be dumb code. It's just code written to run on the blockchain. It's not something that's necessary to offer assistance.
Yeah, exactly. It's the contract by definition here can also include as a subpart a smart contract, but doesn't necessarily need to be.
Right. I mean, it could be an offer and acceptance to actually write a smart contract. So there you go, like inception of smart contract.
Right. Yeah. Exactly.
Okay.
Okay.
Module exception.
Yeah, I added this because it's been screaming out for it, and I realized we didn't have a definition. So.
Yeah. No, I agree with that. Yeah.
Okay. Cool. Force majeure. Example signatories. We only claim force majeure if these conditions are met. See previous comment. It's a situation-based doctrine under which it's reading. I agreed with that. It wasn't clear what you were suggesting. Put the text that's in that comment starting force majeure as a situation-based into the clause.
No, I don't think we need this. I don't think we need this whole thing. I just think we need to put that, in our situation, it's a superventing event, which may exclude liability. So,
yes.
But the meat of this, the reason why I really put this up there is because we probably needed the non-performance provided. We have to define what the event is, and it's going to be unforeseen, uncontrollable, and makes performance impossible. But it also has to be an arbiter's final decision.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
Because let me just tell you why I was thinking this. Because the way we have it written here, anybody could just claim force majeure and just be done with it. Obviously, an arbiter would probably see it differently, but without a definition somewhere in the license, the arbiter really has no place to go.
Right. So, yes, they link back to the arbiter. So force majeure can only be called if an arbiter agrees it's force majeure, and the guidance is the text that you've got there.
Right, exactly. So this is like the Supreme Court would have to look to case law. This would be the case law for an arbiter to go back and say, hey, you signed this license, and you agreed that this clause meant this, right? Yeah. So that's kind of why I threw it up there.
Yeah, no, that's
they're gonna need that as their own instances of judgment in jurisprudence, I guess, or lack of better term.
Jurisprudence, case law, yeah. No, not case law, jurisprudence.
We're going to be making case law on that, so.
Okay, so I've just copied and pasted. Excuse liability for non-performance. The supervening event is unforeseeable. Number one, okay. Uncontrollable, okay, and makes the performance of an obligation impossible. And what I'll add is the decision as to constitutes unforeseeable and uncontrollable lies with the chapter overseeing the license stack in force. Which, so I say license stack in force, so that force majeure also applies to the contract. It can apply to the modules. There's, I don't think, a situation where force majeure would apply to the DPL. I don't know, but what I'm saying is it can apply to each of these levels. So,
well, I think of an instance where the DPL would see force majeure. Death died.
Yeah, no. You can die all you want, but you're still in the chain. Just nobody's got your key.
He died. I mean, this goes back to this conversation we're having about what happens if you only have a one-party lawsuit. So if someone dies on chain and unable to fulfill their duties that they promised someone to do, that would be a force majeure that, maybe somebody on their end, like a relative or a loved one, claims force majeure on their behalf and says, like, look, they can't possibly do this because they're dead, so they need to get out of the contract, right? So
yeah. Okay. Yeah. Right. So license stack is the right wording then, because license stack includes all those three. I'm going to get. Do you want to keep in that edit from example, or is that?
I think examples are necessary. Absolutely.
We only claim if these conditions are met. See previous comment. We need to tidy that up though, because. That see previous comment. There's no previous comment to refer to there. No.
Nope.
Okay. Yeah. We good?
Yeah. Descriptions.
Now, it's rather embarrassing, but I got to this point and realized we've never defined what an object is. So I had to actually go and add it into the dictionary. So under object, I referred back to the dictionary. But the first time you've read through, the object is, I don't know why we've never done this, or I've never done it. But the definition of an object is probably quite important when we're talking about objects. So that's why that's in there.
Well, an object in my head is a person, place, or thing. So.
Say that again, sorry? Person, place, or thing?
Yeah. So that's an object technically. So is it different in the
it's more
DCM?
It's the same spirit, but in kind of chain land. So let me get you the reference. It's in the dictionary. I'm not sure we need to do this, but it might be good to get your view on it. Okay, it's on page 6 of the dictionary. So a uniquely identifiable chain within the DOS. I called it the DOS because actually the DOS and the DCM have some similarity. I need to go through and make sure it's all still coherent. But the Dreamcatcher operating system is what we were previously calling it. The DOS which contains data. Sorry, a uniquely identifiable chain within the DOS which contains data and a mutable history of how that data changed over time and how it interacted with other objects, and it goes with permissions to control access. So that's how I've defined it. So it's pretty much a chain.
Chain. A uniquely identifiable chain. Is this the combination of everybody's stacks? Is this what we're referring to as your object?
Well, their objects can be inside of other objects, but they're uniquely identifiable chains which are owned by someone with a key who can trace back to the original block and has the history of how it's changed over time. That's the characteristics of the object in this case.
Okay. I guess my first question would be: do we need this definition? So,
I think in the dictionary, but not in the DPL. I think what I'd rather do in the DPL is every time I've talked about an object is to be more circumspect about that. But the reason I put it in there is because we're talking about access control, and access control really comes down to the control of the objects. That's the only place it appears. So if we can redefine access control in a way that doesn't refer to objects, then we don't have to refer to the dictionary. But at the moment, I can't think of a way that access control can be clearly defined without saying what the thing is that you're controlling.
So I'll just put a comment here to myself to have a noodle here.
Yeah, I would rather not include, because we're going quite far down the stack in that definition inside of a legal document, and it's like we'll lose people at that point.
Yeah, let me just reread this tomorrow and see if I can come up with something else, because we're probably thinking about other things other than just objects specifically. So
yeah, okay. Right, we've already done signed, and then we've got glorious full page of no comments. Tom, if you can, page 7, DPL v01, primacy of on-chain data. I've got a comment there, which would be very useful if I can get your thoughts on. And if you're just listening this over audio, the comment is about what we can say about the order events when we're talking in multi-chain world. So in order to, I've got something to sell, and I sell it multiple times. The person who I sold it to first owns that, but by first we need a concept of what first means, because there's no universal clock. We need to be able to say that this event happened before this other event on different chains. I'm not sure how we do that. I'm not sure whether we do that. If we don't, then we need to think about what that means in terms of what we say ownership is. So that's just a note to Tom there. Page 7 of DPL.
Well, is there? Okay, so I mean, unless someone rewrites source code, I just kind of, this is more of a question for Tom at the moment, but is there doesn't necessarily have to be a clock per se on chain, but there can be nonce on chain where, as people start to spin up instances, they would have to probably call home, correct, to the main root chain. And in that case, there would be a nonce counter, where there's an exchange, where there's a transaction exchange between, or call, if you will, between the parent chain and the inherited offspring chain. There would have to be a nonce communication between those two, where there's that child chain is initialized to some number, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yep.
So that wouldn't be a time thing. It wouldn't say like, hey, it was done on the 23rd of November, 2021, but it would be in the nonce counter where the parent chain says, hey, by the way, your nonce, 2009 million something, because that's where you started on interacting with me, so I mean, that number might get really large.
Yeah, that gives some indication of precedence. But the
I guess it was a small hexadecimal tag or something, I don't know, but it would be fairly unique where, it would be hard it'd be pretty immutable. It'd be hard to change that. It would be hard to like go, oh, well, I can show proof that to the arbiter that I was there first because look, my nonce is lower or whatnot, but it would be pretty obvious that was something that you created from full cloth. It was not something that actually communicated with the parent chain, so.
Yeah. I'd actually, I'd kind of widen that out. So again, this is partly for Tom, but also for this discussion. So the way I'm thinking, and it's so fundamental to what we're trying to do on this DPL, which is why I want, Tom specifically to weigh in on this one. But the only precedence, the only ordering that I think we can do is when two chains interact with each other. It's perfectly possible on Dreamcatcher, for example, to go into North Korea. You've lost all the internet. You're working away in a chain, and it effectively syncs back up when you 3 months later, you get back over the border. But everything after that, everything you've put on before that, is still valid. It's still on chain. It just is in a bubble. But as soon as you interact with any other chain, say go into a directory service to find another chain, then that interaction has, you can put that in strict ordering. So,
right. Well, I mean, Tom did address that, because I did ask him about this, because in my comment about validation and validators, and Tom did mention, and if I'm wrong, I'm sorry, but he did mention to me at least that there are validators on the network. So, but they're chosen at random.
Yes, that's right. That's right. But the
so that validator could be the nonce keeper as well. So until you've actually called home, you don't actually get a nonce number or a time on chain. So it behooves you to communicate with the rest of us. So again, it would be one of those things where sure you could work in a bubble all you want, but if you really want to prove that you own what you really own, you better be talking to the rest of us because we want communication and transparency.
I think we're essentially we're saying the same thing. So what I'm saying is there's an interaction between a chain which gives some idea and precedence and ordering, and that can be traced back to it's not an earthing event. I'm not using that term, but it's the call home. Let's call it the call home event, which is the between two chains. Eventually up the stack, there'll be a common call home. They're saying, okay, at that point we agree. That this was the state, and then we can move forward from there. What I don't know, and what would like Tom really to talk about is if that doesn't sound like high enough granularity in order to do what we're really talking about is selling NFTs as tiny little chunks of things. So there's going to be quite a lot of them that sound like quite high granularity. Maybe it's the passing of the rights for the IP of the NFT itself. Requires a third party to say this happened at this point, and that's a trusted third party. I don't know, but there has to be something in there. But what I don't want to do is to put something in here that is just simply practically not possible or not what Tom's actually done. So, really, this is a kind of note saying, Tom, can you check this out? Give us a clear steer on what it means inside of a multi-chain universe to have precedent of events on chains that may only have interacted through a tree that spans back days or weeks.
Well, I'm Polkadot does that. So, but they have validator networks. So.
Yeah. It's possible, but I don't know what he's done. That's the thing. Right.
Because in terms of the actual protocol's architecture, we're more closely aligned to Polkadot than any other chain out there, right? In terms of the actual specs and the way it would function to a point. Like, we're probably more of a 80% of theirs, and we're taking like a lot of the good stuff, but leaving a lot of the bad stuff on the table. But I would say, in terms of all the protocols I've seen, Polkadot's one of the closest that we've come to.
Yeah, I think that's a fair comment. Yeah.
And I'm sorry, Tom, if I'm wrong. It is what it is. I can hear him seething right now.
You'll find out later on Discourse.
Yeah.
Possible duplication. Only with the definition, whereas this is part of the clause. Is there another part I've possibly duplicated agreement to attribution? We've defined attribution, but I don't think there's another clause which covers attribution.
We'll just do control that. We've got 10 definitions here of attribution, so that's what I was worried about.
Sorry?
Okay, we got attribution at the very top. So I'm just saying that is this duplication where we should be putting this all into one definition of attribution because we were using it. So we got attribution, the distribution of any benefits, and then we got attribution, intellectual property rights, and then we got agreement to attribution. So,
hold on, let me follow your thinking here.
So I'm just trying to follow my thinking too. So what was I thinking earlier? All
right.
These are agreed to be held to the contract.
So attribution appears 10 times. The first time it appears is under definitions. So we're just saying that there is a word that we're using, which is attribution, which is disbursement of any benefit for the use or sale of an asset of users who can prove contribution. It doesn't say that's enforced, it just says there's a thing called attribution. And I'm looking down, we're refer to, and then the only clause, unless I'm missing something, the only clause that deals with attribution is agreement to attribution. So this is where it's enforced. You're saying there's a thing called attribution that we've defined, and you're agreeing to be held by that. Have I missed something else?
I guess I don't know. I should have probably expanded this topic when I was thinking about it earlier.
I
was having an issue for some reason. I can't remember why. This was agreed to be held to the contract for attribution, which the attribution was generated. So what we're saying here is that your contribution is recorded regardless, and unless you've signed your rights away or shown some sort of evidence otherwise, you will always have this money sitting there waiting to be collected.
Right. Right. Exactly. So if you state in the contract that this is the attribution algorithm that we're using, then great. If you don't state it at all, then we're still recording your contribution, and the attribution can be down the line. If you volunteer, or for example, what we're doing at the moment, we haven't agreed attribution for this call, but the fact of it, the contribution is recorded, and the attribution is going to be down the line. Until then, if it does generate, if someone wanted to give us a tenner for putting this call up on YouTube, that tenner will be held in escrow until we agree the attribution algorithm.
I see. I touched on this as well in requirements. So, and again, I'm going to come back to the term stack, because a lot of these things are stacks.
Mm-hmm.
Everything seems to be. So I just kind of mentally move them into different stacks. So we got the attribution stack, which is what I call it, in the requirements. In the attribution stack, you have your core root attribution, who is the owner of the actual object or asset, if you will. And then leaves start to fill in on top of that, depending on who else contributes to that underlying asset.
Right.
And then it grows the stack, the attribution stack. And then the dream catcher keeps records of who gets what in that stack for that particular asset.
Yep.
And it can grow or shrink depending on who comes and goes and whatnot, and how often that someone else uses it, or how it's being sold or distributed or whatnot. But yeah, it's a container, if you will. That's all.
Yeah, exactly. The way we talked about it in the dictionary is your contributions are that stack that you just talked about. So your contribution. You've got that NFT. That NFT can be used in one piece of software. It could actually be used in another piece of software. There could be this great tree of other contributors all putting into what is an indelible record of who's done what. And then there's a dispersal event, which is, well, if we don't make a single dime from it, okay. But as soon as there's some revenue to be dispersed, then that goes through. That's where attribution kicks in. And the attribution algo decides, okay, right, we've got the evidence of who did what, and we've got this £10 note. How are we going to disperse that? So there's, so that's the, on the one hand, is the record of the contribution. On the other hand, attribution is an event that goes through an algo, and it's probably triggered by revenue. There may be other benefit, which is why I've kind of put it as benefit as opposed to revenue. But let's say if it's just someone's earned a lot of money by selling a piece of software of which you've contributed to this tree, then the attribution algorithm is the thing that routes the money to you. Does that make sense?
I understand that. I guess I'm just fumbling over this paragraph, so I'm just going to have a read it tomorrow and
okay.
That's have a sleep first. I can't remember why I was having an issue with it, but it was a bit of a speed bump, and I was just like, wait a minute.
Okay, all right. Let's we'll hold it in there, and then we'll talk through it again.
So damages I was fine with. Reputation, because all this stuff that we've already covered recently, so I didn't really have anything to add here yet.
No, this was I think I just tidied it up a bit. Revocation of access to assets we'd gone through 3 calls ago, and then we're at the end. Okay, so in review, there's a bit of noodling to be done on your side on attribution about whether it makes sense in this terms. So if you need another conversation about that, I can try and be a bit more precise or use fewer words about that. But that's if you refer to the dictionary, there's some there's quite a lot of examples around what an attribution algo could be. Then going up, there's the question for Tom, which is really something that I just want my mind put at rest, that I'm not thinking that it does something that it doesn't. Then the evidence stack, I'm going to add the evidence stack. And objects, and I think that's it. I'll go through and clear off the comments that we've cleared off over voiced here. But I think that's it's a very dirty v0.1. I'm probably what I'm going to do is leave it fallow for a day and then do a slow read through myself, just to have a clear eye on it. But I think if we add in those few, and if you come back on the points that you raised, or if there's points on attribution, I think there's probably something here we could potentially give someone, a very smart lawyer who knows a bit about blockchain. Probably it's weak in the guidance for anyone else, though. That's my only worry. But yeah, that's what I think we're at. Well, I mean, what do you reckon? Could we hand this over to a lawyer to tighten up?
Yeah, I think so. I think we're getting there.
Yeah.
I think we're just a few days away, really.
Yeah. The as I said at the top of the call, the things I'd like to do is to put at least one example of what a module looks like, and one example of what a contract would look like. That's more of a thought experiment to make sure the whole thing doesn't unravel. And then we get to that point, yeah, I think we're probably done, and then we put it in front of a lawyer and it will tear it to shreds. Let's see, you can't possibly do any of this. Oh, okay. Now the big question, of course, is all these clauses. Would you personally be willing to sign up to these clauses as we've discussed if they're tightened up? Is this something that you would commit to hypothetically? Because that's our real thought experiment here, isn't it? Can the four of us get to a common DPL that we're content would protect us and give us a clear steer on rights and responsibilities?
I mean, that's really where the rubber meets the road, because you and I agree on this. So I think that's pretty much two truths. Yeah. Now, Tom may have an issue, so that may be a false. And I mean, there's going to be several others that might be involved in the bootstrapping exercise. The question is, not even if the core individuals involved in this would even sign this. I don't even think that's the real meat of the question. I think the real meat of the question is, would a person coming in off the street who's going to lend capital sign this?
That's a big one, isn't it? Yeah.
I mean, so that kind of thing, like that's really where it's really going to make an instant difference. So.
I think we're probably going to be v0.3 before we put it in front of an investor. But you're absolutely right. That's there's going to be we always wanted to put up it's not quite a straw man, but a kind of lean version that we would be happy with, and then move on and see what the rest of the world thinks of it individually. But I'm quite happy with where it is at the moment. All right. Okay. So what time is it? All right. That's probably a good time to wrap up, unless you've got anything else to add.
No, that's it. That's all I got.
All right. Cool.
For now.
So what I'd like to do, if this is all right, so it's Tuesday now, if we leave this 48 hours to the next slot, and that will give me time to leave it fallow, then do a close read through. And any comments that you add, are responded by then. And that call will be to tidy up anything that comes through that slow read through and that step back. But also by that point, hopefully I've put in at least one example module, or at least thinking what the process of that module is. Put a bit of flow around the arbitration and see if we can get the kind of parameterized contract and make sure that makes sense. But these are going to be examples as opposed to the DPL, which is the meat itself. How does that sound?
Great.
So Thursday, 48 hours from now.
Yeah, and you asked me to do a couple other things, and I forgot to put them in my notes. Do you happen to remember what those are?
During this call?
Experiments. Huh?
Sorry, ask you during this call?
No, last call. I might have to go back and listen to it. I'll just probably look back and listen to that call, figure out what it was that you wanted me to do a couple things, and I drew a blank this morning. When I was
it was one was gap analysis.
Gap analysis.
But I don't know what I think. That was only one. I think I don't think there's a second one.
It was two.
But yeah, it was the have we?
There's like a gap analysis, some sort of example or something. I'm drawing a blank, so
okay, can't remember that. No, sorry. The gap analysis was the important bit for me because the one very possible problem here is completely missed an entire section that we should cover.
Right.
So, is that kind of correct? I think this is roughly correct, but I'm not as confident that it's complete.
I guess I have to do some more market research in order to find out whether or not we're missing anything.
Yeah.
I always find 2 or 3 other projects a day, it seems, that are coming close to around the edges of this project. So there's some sort of phase shift happening in the consciousness right now. The zeitgeist is changing.
There does. There really does, doesn't there?
Yeah.
It's interesting. We're not the only ones.
Everybody is talking about it, but no one's defined it yet. No one can put their hands on what it is that they're talking about, but they all seem to have a way to solve it. So,
yeah, but everyone's solving bits of it. That's the thing. Bits and pieces around the edges, as you say. But I think what that points to is we're all kind of agreed, not very articulately, but we are agreed that the current traditional way of doing things is shit, and it needs to change to something else.
And it's only benefiting the incumbents right now. So
yeah, exactly. Right, man. Thanks very much for your time. And
no problem, man. It's great talking to you tonight.
Enjoy these. I'll drop a calendar invite in, and I'll see you in Discourse. And
yeah,
we can